The storm had been raging for 3 days across the crystalline peaks of Drakkar IV when Dr. Elias Ward heard the sound that would change everything. It wasn't the howling wind or the crack of lightning splitting the violet sky. It was something far more primal, a keening wail that cut through the tempest like a blade through flesh. Elias stumbled to the reinforced window of his isolated research station, his weathered hands gripping the frame. Through sheets of rain illuminated by bioluminescent moss, he saw her. A dragon, massive and magnificent, her scales shimmering like molten copper even in the storm's fury. But something was wrong. Her flight was erratic, desperate, and in her talons, cradled with impossible gentleness, was a smaller form. His heart, long dormant behind walls of guilt and isolation, lurched in his chest. The dragon descended toward his landing platform with all the grace of a falling star. Elias didn't think. 15 years ago, he'd been the best trauma surgeon in the Terran Medical Corps. 15 years ago, he'd made a mistake that cost 17 lives. He'd fled to this remote world to escape that memory, to exist rather than live. But old instincts died hard. He grabbed his emergency med kit and hit the airlock release. The wind nearly knocked him flat as he stepped onto the platform. The dragon, Sarenth, as he would later learn, had already landed. She was enormous up close, easily 20 meters from snout to tail. Her amber eyes, each the size of Elias's head, fixed on him with an intelligence that stole his breath. Those eyes were crying. Thick, luminescent tears rolled down her scaled cheeks as she lowered her head, exposing her vulnerable throat in a gesture of submission no dragon had ever shown a human. In her claws lay a juvenile dragon, no larger than a terrestrial horse. Its scales, which should have gleamed with youth's vibrant hue, were dull gray. Shallow breaths rattled in its chest. Please. Sarenth's voice resonated directly in Elias's mind, the telepathic communication of her species desperate and broken. Please, I have watched you. You heal the creatures of this world. My youngling, please. Elias's medical training warred with his self-imposed exile. He wasn't worthy. He'd failed before. He'd sworn never to hold another life in his hands. But looking into Sarenth's eyes, seeing a mother's anguish that transcended species, he knew he had no choice. Get her inside. Now. The research station's main lab had never been designed for this, but Elias worked with what he had. Sarenth barely fit through the cargo bay doors, her bulk filling the space as she gently laid her youngling on the sterile floor. Elias's scanners whirred to life, his hands moving with muscle memory that 15 years hadn't erased. Crystalline pneumonia, he muttered, studying the readouts. Fluid buildup in the respiratory sacs. But there's something else. His eyes widened. Metallic poisoning. Thorium-based compound. The mining operations, Sarenth's mental voice was anguished. The humans who came before you. They poisoned our waters. My youngling drank from the stream near their abandoned site. Guilt crashed over Elias like a tidal wave. Always humanity, leaving scars across the galaxy. But this wasn't the time for self-recrimination. The juvenile dragon, Sarenth's child, had minutes, not hours. His hands flew across his equipment. Dragon physiology wasn't in any human medical database, but biology followed certain rules. He synthesized a chelating agent to bind the thorium, modified for the dragon's copper-based blood chemistry. For the pneumonia, he'd need to drain the respiratory sacs manually, a procedure that would require precision he hadn't exercised in over a decade. This will hurt her, Elias said, meeting Sarenth's gaze, and I can't promise success. I'm not the doctor I once was. Sarenth's massive head moved close to his, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her scales. You are the doctor you need to be. I have faith. Those words shattered something in Elias's chest. He worked through the night. His hands, steadier than they'd been in years, guided nanoscopic probes into the juvenile's respiratory system. He injected the chelating agent directly into the dragon's bloodstream, monitoring for adverse reactions on equipment jury-rigged for alien physiology. When the juvenile convulsed, he held firm. When her vital signs flatlined, he didn't give up. Sarenth watched everything, her massive form trembling but never interfering, trusting this broken human with her most precious treasure. At dawn, as Drakkar IV's twin suns painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold, the juvenile dragon's eyes fluttered open. Her scales, which had been the gray of death, began to shimmer with nascent bronze. She took a breath, deep and clear, and released a tiny plume of flame. Sarenth's cry of joy was deafening. She nuzzled her youngling, tears of relief streaming down her face, before turning to Elias. The human stood swaying on his feet, exhausted beyond measure, his hands trembling with spent adrenaline. "You have given me back my world," Sarinth said, her mental voice warm with gratitude. "What can I possibly offer in return?" Elias looked at his hands that had just saved a life instead of failing one. For the first time in 15 years, he felt something other than guilt. He felt purpose. "Help me," he said quietly. "There are more mining sites. More poisoned water. If humans damage this world, let me help heal it. Let me help your kind." Sarinth's eyes glowed with understanding. "Then you shall. And perhaps in healing us, you will heal yourself." As the mother dragon and her youngling took flight into the morning sky, Elias Ward watched from his platform. He activated his long-dormant communications array and began composing a message to the Terran Medical Corps. There was work to be done, lives to save, wrongs to right. He was finally ready to be a doctor again, and it had taken a desperate mother's faith to show him the way.